Hello, dear audience. This is Rauta channel, and here we have a very, very special, old school guest. You guessed it right. I have no clue who this guy is. So, who are you? All again, I don't know why you're here. What you had a band or something?
Nothing of any significance. If you look at the course of this planet and human behavior on this planet, nothing I've done in my life is of any significance. There's really pressing problems in the world that are far more important than anything I could ever do, unfortunately.
Now, that's a kind of a humbling start for a interview.
No, it's reality. I'm the first one to wish the world was all about music and friendship and fun, positivity, respect, equality, but it's not. And when it comes down to it, I mean, escapism is very nice, but it's also very cowardice.
Exactly.
And you know, I love music. I'm very passionate about it, and I'm very, very thankful that there's an audience who is passionate about my music too, and who's given me the gift of a career. But really, when it comes down to it, none of this has any significance. There's problems we should really address as human beings.
That is very true.
I know that sounds really dreary, but that's unfortunately how we created it on this planet that has so many possibilities.
Exactly. But now we have to really go for the younger audience as well. I mean, most people already...
We don't. We've lost them by now. You know,
I mean,
they didn't tune in to hear all this dreary shit, so...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you're known for a lot of bands, mostly for Celtic Frost and Triptykon, but also for your career with Hellhammer and, well, other ventures and projects as well. And you become one of the black metal kind of a godfathers, shall we say grandfathers of the whole style, given that you were a big part of the whole creation of it with various projects and bands and your, well, steps in the whole music industry. And now you're back to basically to your roots with Triumph of Death, and you've been playing these really, really old songs for people who were not even born when your songs were made and released. How does this make you feel to go back to those early days?
It's a very surreal experience, and of course, every time we go on stage with this music, it's a mass of emotions and memories. But what you said, you're known for your career with this and that and Hellhammer. But the thing is, when Hellhammer existed, it wasn't a career. Hellhammer, the status Hellhammer has is entirely down to the audience now. When Hellhammer actually existed, it was a band that was completely in the underground, known only to a handful of people. And when we tried to break out of the underground a little bit with sending demos to record companies or releasing an EP, the reviews were scathing. They hated us. The letters we got from record companies were humiliating. So there wasn't really a career. Now Hellhammer has become a career, but that's not because of anything I did. It's the exact same music. That's the absurd thing. I'm standing on stage. We're playing worldwide with the exact same songs
that were rejected back in the days.
So the career with Hellhammer, I have to really thank the audience for. They created this. And I think it probably started to happen when the black metal wave, the first black metal wave happened here in Oslo in the early 90s. And Hellhammer was often mentioned as an influence. I think that's when the tide turned on Hellhammer, and which eventually led to the Triumph of Death project, bringing Hellhammer's music to the stage for the first time.
I think of all bands, now that you mentioned Norway, which totally took your roots and tried to continue from that was Darkthrone with their albums, which definitely paid tribute to not only Hellhammer but also early Celtic Frost, was, Morbid Tales and all that. And you can really hear that they've been strongly influenced by all that. But you were not given credit as such, like you said, back in the days. How had it made you feel that your music was kind of not exactly copied, but so much taken, inspired, and then created and moving on and brought your name with those inlays and interviews and stuff like that?
Well, when you come from a tiny Swiss farm village, and you have this You have this odd dream of playing music in your life, of spending your life somehow in the music industry. It's such a far-fetched concept. I didn't have rich parents. I had a quite a challenging youth. I didn't have any connections. There wasn't much of a scene in Switzerland to begin with. There was no peers I could have asked. There was no managers so this whole experience of my life. The word surreal pops up again. It's not something I could have expected. It's a dream, and I was quite convinced as a teenager it would remain a dream.
Like never come real.
Yeah, and everything you just listed is a privilege for which I'm extremely grateful. And it's something that seemed completely improbable when I was a teenager starting to play. I was convinced this would remain within the four walls of my room, and I'm hugely grateful for the loyalty of the audience, for other musicians, like you said, Darkthrone, for example. And by the way, Fenris and Nocturnal, I have utmost respect for these people. They're amazing creators on their own. They don't need any affiliation to Celtic Frost.
True.
They're quite some innovators themselves. So yeah, and they have their own story that sometimes mirrors mine. Mm-hmm. So sitting here now after this long ride, I think all these things kind of close circles, and it's also connected to what we said earlier. I go on stage and I play this Hellhammer music, and there's certain moments in certain songs where I have a very clear memory of how we did this 40 years ago, when I was standing there with Steve Warrior, with whom I formed Hellhammer, and there was water in the rehearsal room, and it smelled like mildew.
Mm-hmm. Horrible.
It's really basic underground conditions, and we wrote these songs, and I would have never thought that I'm going to play America with this Finland, Norway. We just did it because it was inside of us. Steve Warrior also had a very, very challenging youth. Mm-hmm. It was something that was screaming out of us, and we needed to let it out. It was a very, very small personal thing at the time. And even though we dreamt of a career, nobody really thought that we would ever have a career.
It must have been so weird music, because I mean, metal in the early '80s was still kind of a young thing, and
it was developing. But that made it exciting. Metal was developing so much that you could never tell how metal's going to sound like in half a year.
Exactly.
And I really enjoyed that. You went to a record store, which of course now you do on YouTube, but you went to a record store and you literally had your mind blown almost every visit to a record store, because you would invariably discover an album with music of a kind that you had never heard before. And I don't want to just be nostalgic, but I kind of miss this a little bit. Mm-hmm, yeah. Metal has become a respectable scene worldwide, and it's fantastic, of course, and I'm a part of it. Mm-hmm. But I in a way, also miss this spirit of revolution, of innovation. Of course,
rebellion, maybe.
Yeah, there is still innovation, but back then it was such giant steps that you really, I mean, you every time you went to the record store, you almost every single time you found an album that would change your life. Mm-hmm.
It would have been different, something new.
And of course that makes me nostalgic in a way, even though I enjoy very, very much being a part of the current scene. It's a mixed bag, you know. Yeah.
What I noticed when you played on stage was kind of funny that, because you were from the kind of older generation, if you can say that. Of course. But your band members are younger than your music. How it is for them to play this music?
Well, you know, this is intentional. Mm-hmm. Because my drummer and my bassist in Triptykon are basically the age Steve Warrior and I were when we formed Hellhammer, and I really wanted to have that spirit in there. And I was very careful in selecting them. I wanted people who really understand this, who don't play it just to get the exposure and get a name. Yeah. I wanted them to actually feel this. Yeah. And our guitar player, who's somewhere in between, age-wise, he's one of my best friends. I've known him for many years, and I know he's probably more rock and roll than me. He lives this. He's like the authentic heavy metal musician. So I think it's a fairly good cross-section of what is needed to understand Hellhammer's music, to bring it on stage in an authentic way.
Are they never, I don't know if they would admit it, but do they ever feel, because by natural course, they would be kind of overshadowed by your presence because you are the band and they are, well, there to play the music.
Of course, but I mean, it's just the sheer nature of things. They're young, they're at the beginning of their path. Mm-hmm. I was at the same place when the first few concerts we had with Celtic Frost with bigger bands. Mm-hmm. Who were we? We were nobody, and we were overshadowed. It's just the way it goes. But you also have an exposure, and you learn things every single minute you spend on a stage or preparing. You learn things that will help you also to make your way and one day be on the platform. There's nothing wrong with it. Every profession you choose, you first learn, and of course you're overshadowed by those who already have the talent.
The veterans versus trainees.
Yeah, I mean, if you open a bar, if you're a woodcutter, whatever it is, that's just a path. Of course, nowadays with mass media, social media, a lot of people think, it looks so easy here on the screen. I want to be that tomorrow, but that's not how it works.
Exactly.
In the real world.
You need to take those baby steps.
But my fellow musicians, my friends in the band, they knew this. Mm-hmm. And what really unites us is the joy of playing this. And there's really no like steps. We're all the same.
You all treat equally each other, and all.
Even though it's my music and it's the band that I formed, and you call me a legend and blah blah blah. The band is completely democratic, and everybody gets the same share. There's no difference. I'm not a dictator, and I don't have to be the boss. I'm doing this for fun,
Yep.
And the only thing that's probably difficult for them is to listen to my endless stories from way back when.
The nostalgic rants.
Yeah, when they have to listen to me for hours, talk about my recollections. I've probably already told them 50 times, and they're just being polite and nod. And
trying grandpa, thank you.
Trying to fight off sleep.
Yeah, okay.
That's probably the hardest part for them.
Now, one question really came to my mind when I was thinking about all these different bands and projects, and now that you're doing Hellhammer songs, once again, you have come out with a different name. Obviously, this is related to one of your releases, but why not go with the Hellhammer name? Why not go with the Celtic Frost Plays Hellhammer or something like that? Why have to go with that?
That's absurd, because it's not Hellhammer. Mm-hmm.
So because of the lineup changes, or?
Actually, we just talked about that with a friend of mine over breakfast. We were talking about the band Venom, who, for me and many other people, were instrumental, extremely important some years ago. And yet there's two Venoms. There's a Venom and a Venom Incorporated, and we all feel that's very unfortunate.
And we have the same thing going on with bands like Immortal being split into Immortal and ABBA.
I don't like this. I don't like this. I really am not a fan of lying to your audience who actually got you there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, I would have the rights to call this Hellhammer, but it's not Hellhammer. Mm-hmm. Hellhammer was a very, very unique constellation of people at a very unique point in time. And you cannot possibly recreate that. And if I would say this is Hellhammer, I would be doing it for pure commercial reasons, and it would be putting up a smokescreen for the fans, making them believe something that doesn't actually exist.
Okay, so this is more honest
I
way.
was a part in Hellhammer, and I was fanatical. Mm-hmm. It was every second of my life. This is why, no, this is not Hellhammer. It's a tribute band. And I'd rather be open and honest about this. I'm still friends with the people who were in Hellhammer. Mm-hmm. And for one reason or another, some of them tragic, they can no longer play this. Mm-hmm. And even if they could play it, if we would reunite now as older men, it still would not really equal the original Hellhammer. We were burning at the time, we were desperate, we had a difficult youth, and it was, in Switzerland there was youth unrest, and the police shot at young people. Mm-hmm. The youth of Switzerland at the time was standing up against the establishment and so on. And this is the environment that Hellhammer existed in. And it was the end of the punk wave, the beginning of the new wave British heavy metal. So you cannot recreate that. It would be a total sham. It would be like a Hollywood movie if I would go on stage and say, this is Hellhammer.
Fair enough.
I'd rather be honest, go on stage and say, look, we're trying to be as close as possible. Mm-hmm. We're doing our best to make this authentic. But it's a tribute. And it was the same when I left Celtic Frost and I formed Triptykon, there were some people in the industry that I worked with. They said, call it Celtic Frost. It's going to be much easier to market.
Yeah, always they keep saying that.
And since I wrote like 95% of Celtic Frost music, it would have been easy for me to say, okay, it's Celtic Frost. But it would have been a lie, because it's not. Celtic Frost was me and Martin Hain.
Yeah.
And in the early days also Reed St. Mark. And you know, I'm of course it's nice to have a career and to have an income, but I'm not going to lie to my audience who got me there just to have an income. I'd rather, you know, I formed Triptykon, I formed Triumph of Death, and I didn't know would it work. But I like the challenge. I like, you know, just because I'm older, I don't want to play it safe. Metal is not about playing it safe, at least the metal I created. I like the challenge to see, will I be able to resurrect my career? Will I be able to bring this on stage convincingly? I'd rather try this, and if I fail, I fail. I can live with that. But it's honest. So this is I don't call this Celtic Frost, I don't call this Hellhammer.
Yeah. Now, the question then becomes this, will we someday see, I don't know, like a Circle of Tyrants called band doing Celtic Frost?
No, Celtic Frost is over. And it has to be over because Martin Hain died. If Martin Hain was alive, there was such a bond between us, and we actually reiterated that 2.5 weeks before he died. We met over coffee as we did frequently, and we actually talk about all of these things. But he died, and that bond is gone, and that magic is gone. That was really the backbone of Celtic Frost. But everybody who was in Celtic Frost with Martin Hain, and yesterday I backstage after the show, Anders Odden was our guest, who was the live guitar player on the Monothis tour. And I just talked to Reed St. Mark, the drummer of Celtic Frost, 2 weeks ago. Everybody who's in Celtic Frost with Martin Hain misses him immensely, and we're all, again, very nostalgic about some of the experiences we made with him. And we all would somehow like to pay tribute to that. So there's always loose talk about maybe doing 1 or 2 tribute concerts. But call it that, you know, say this is a tribute concert to Martin Hain. It's not a Celtic Frost reunion. Before fucking Blabbermouth picks up this interview and says, Tom Moore talks about Celtic Frost. No, I don't.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way actually to put it, because we know that these kind of things happen.
We all feel Martin touched us in an extremely important manner, and working with Martin changed all of our lives as we changed his. And we all would like to go on stage and there again try to be as authentic as possible, and maybe play a Celtic Frost set the way we did it with Martin, in his memory.
Yeah.
Maybe do that 1, 2, 3 times.
Reflect.
But that's it.
Yeah.
It's just a few friends celebrating him. It's not a huge commercial venture or anything.
Exactly.
Like that, yeah.
Exactly.
This I could imagine, but nothing else.
Yeah. What about Triptykon? Well, there will be new chapters to that story once you have more or less completed this run with Triumph of Death.
Well, Triptykon is an ongoing thing. I'm playing with Triptykon in the very near future.
Okay.
And I'm always hoping I will die before I have to write another album, but it hasn't happened yet, unfortunately. So the next Triptykon album is actually already hanging on the wall at my apartment in Switzerland. I just have to finish writing it.
Okay, that's a good thing to.
I have some songs that are a very strange combination out of Hellhammer and Pink Floyd.
Okay, that's
you know,
interesting.
with all due respect, I could never reach Pink Floyd, but I'm talking about the atmosphere.
Yeah,
it's a very improbable combination of extremely dark and at the same time floating music. And maybe that's an indication what's going to be on the next Triptykon album.
Now, I must say that when I did these worst to best videos for my channel of Celtic Frost, I sometimes do with bands that have disbanded, because it's like my way to run back to the whole discography and do a little bit of reflection with like how things changed and which directions things went. And sometimes I describe the discographies with a letter, like how the careers went, like M, you know, first going up, then going down. And for you, I felt Celtic Frost was like you. It started with Morbid Tales, which is my favorite, and it ended with my other favorite in the end. So it kind of reached the peak moment. But then I noticed when I was listening to this whole one that I hope that you're not offended, but Cold Lake is missing from streaming services, and everybody knows it's merely an album which is not often seen as like
everybody
the people
knows.
that
Everybody knows it's a piece of shit.
It's not a piece of shit. I think
well, it is.
I mean, it's
Look,
weird album, but
it's a really, really shitty album I did 34 years ago, and that's really all there is to say. It doesn't even merit a minute of talking. It's so dismal musically that it's a joke. This fucking album is a joke. And
is it one of those flaws or mistakes you mentioned before we started?
I'm a human being. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not perfect. People say, Tom, you're a legend, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, nothing could be further from the truth. I'm a human being, and I take step by step, and some of the steps are missteps. Mm-hmm. Luckily, I didn't have too many of these, but Cold Lake was a grave misstep in every conceivable manner. And that, of course, was terrible in 1988 when it was the newest album I had released. But now it's 34 fucking years ago, and I don't give a shit.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, it happened. I learned a lot from it, luckily, and I have been able, because of that, I've been able to avoid failing so much as a professional again. But that's the only benefit I could think of this album. Now, it makes for good firewood, and you're right. I have a work catalog together with my manager where everything I ever done is listed with the registrations and stuff, and of course Cold Lake is not in there, and it's also not on my wall at home and stuff. This album, it's a piece of shit. You know, I'm not going to smear my walls with excrement.
I get it. So that's the reason why that's missing from the streaming services as well.
But you're right. If you make a series of about failures of bands, that album definitely belongs in there. But that's the only claim of fame of this album.
Okay, fair enough. I was just mentioning it because you said that people are not gonna necessarily know what there is to happen with Triptykon. I mean, you changed so much style with basically every Celtic Frost.
I don't really think I changed style at all.
Okay.
I think Triptykon is probably even closer to Hellhammer Spirit musically, the atmosphere, than Celtic Frost sometimes was. Celtic Frost was a highly experimental band. Mm-hmm. And I think, for example, Into the Pandemonium, which was a very important album for Celtic Frost, is very far away from Hellhammer. But if you listen to the first Triptykon album, which is a black monolith, it's much closer to the spirit of a song like Triumph of Death. Mm-hmm. I think Triptykon is really the essence of everything I've done, and it's really a clear line. And it's very close also to Monotheist, the last Celtic Frost album.
Yeah.
So I don't think I changed style so much. I just tried to reinvent myself, but I feel very comfortable within that style, and I see no reason to change it. I also see no reason anymore at this point in my life to be hugely experimental. I've done all of this with Celtic Frost for many years, and I think it's now down to the younger generation to do this. I right now enjoy very much exploring the darkness of music, exploring the more atmospheric side of music. This is where I feel comfortable at this point. Yeah.
Now, when I was doing that discography run and talking with my metal friends about it, like different albums, it was clear that different people seem to have different favorite ones, which is always a good sign for many albums and bands. And, like there's not just one clear favorite ones among many, but it's more like, hey, I'm into the Pandemonium. Oh, I like more.
Well, that's of course a privilege that there's enough albums of value there that people can make a selection. I feel very fortunate that this is the case. Again, this is not something I could have planned when I was this little teenager in the stinky rehearsal. I feel very, very lucky and happy that the audience sees it that way. And of course, they're so different. Of course, somebody likes this album more. And there's a whole world to be explored on Morbid Tales, on Into Pandemonium. Yeah.
What about lyrics these days? Obviously, as we grow older, things kind of change in our heads, even if we remain the same in the core. But the way we express ourselves, not only with riffs and melodies and, well, music in general, but lyrics, how do you cope with that nowadays compared to, say, early days?
Lyrics have become much more personal over the years, of course. Because when you start the band as a young teenager, you haven't really lived the life yet. What are you going to sing about?
You can't sing about broken hearts if you don't have any.
No, you resort to maybe historical topics or occult topics to bring something across you want to bring across. But then now I'm going to be 59 this year, and of course I've lived quite a varied, intense life, and especially the last 10 years in my private life were extremely difficult, and the lyrics become more personal because you express what you feel, and it has reached a level where it has become very difficult for me to write lyrics because it requires you to be painfully open, and I have no problem with the openness, but just to bring this on paper is not so easy. It was actually much easier when you would open a history book and see Gilles de Rais and write a song about it. It's not your pain.
Exactly.
But nowadays, unfortunately, I've some of the choices I made in the last 10 years and some of the things that happened to me and my health and everything. There's unfortunately plenty of things, moving things that I can write about myself.
Now, one topic I want to mention, because it was brought that some people, like when I mentioned that I'm going to interview you here, like, hey, please, could you talk about H.R. Giger's, I don't know how it's pronounced, Giger?
Yeah, Giger is perfect.
Okay, so, and you've been not just a fan of his work, but also a friend, and your paths have crossed, obviously, multiple times, and you have also kind of brought his art and legacy to the world of metal. I mean, everybody knows Alien movies, and many know his various paintings and all. But you have been a big part of bringing like his name on the map in the metal music because, well, your contact. How do you feel he has inspired you over the years, even though he's also unfortunately passed?
Well, I've said it many times. Giger was as influential to me as were bands like Black Sabbath or Angel Witch, even though he was a visual artist, but he has had the atmosphere, the message in his paintings were as crucial to me as some of my musical influences. For me personally, Giger is one of the most significant artists who's ever lived. And there again, I feel extremely fortunate and grateful that I was granted to know him and become friends with him. There again, as a young little teenager who was worshipping his books, I never thought this would ever happen. But Giger was a hugely important and instrumental person in my life, and he of course also became a mentor. And then later, when I had my own career, we became artists who could exchange equal experiences, which again was a privilege. And I'm trying to do what he gave me. I'm trying to do this justice by still working for his estate together with his widow. I'm still the co-director of the museum, and I'm still co-curating some of the exhibitions, because I'm trying to give something back of the enormous mass of what he has given me. There's going to be, if everything goes well, there's going to be quite a significant exhibition of his works in Los Angeles by the end of this year.
Cool.
And I'm also involved there, and it's fantastic. I think his work needs to be seen. It needs to be kept in the public eye.
I totally agree. Beautiful artist, indeed.
Absolutely.
You have done also, beyond music, you have created other kinds of art. Can you tell the audience about the work beyond the music?
I haven't really created any art.
Nothing that you would call, like, okay.
No, I've rambled in 2 books that are not essential, and I painted some death masks that are even less essential.
But some people seem to say like they really appreciate.
I'm not trying to be artificially humble, but we just talked about Giger.
Yeah.
When I put a brush to a death mask, Giger is like a real artist.
Okay.
Just let's be realistic. That's right. I carry a lot of respect for the word art, and of course in the English language, what I'm doing, you call this. He's an artist. But I always feel even odd with this, because if you go to the Sistine Chapel, and you look at the ceiling, there you see art. Yeah,
we cannot really compare to some old metal demo to art in the same sense.
I mean, it is art, of course. Nowadays, art, everybody can do art, and that is, of course, a legitimate concept. But I'm a bit old school.
Yeah.
To me, art requires talent. I'm honestly not artificial. I'm honestly not sure if I actually have that talent.
So can we call you a craftsman then?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
But will it happen someday that we could see? Because I mean, you did
maybe you could just call me preposterous.
I don't want to do that. But you did a really great thing with the Requiem thing, which was later on released on LP version as well. I was really happy to get for review and watch the show, and I think that was like your music brought to a different level. Could we even see the possibility expanding that kind of a thing concept with Giger art and bringing the whole Swiss underground art into a bigger world?
That was quite. That was quite a laborious, complex project, and as proud as I am that we did it, I'm also very glad it's behind us. I don't have to do this twice. No.
But it was a great thing to do. I mean, it looked and sounded fantastic.
I have no regrets. I was in my private life. I was in a very difficult place at the time when I got the opportunity to finish it with rope burn, and I knew I had to do this. I knew this opportunity wouldn't arise again. But I wasn't really in the place to do it, so it was a very, very difficult thing to juggle the two things. And I had a lot of great people who helped me with it. I don't want to take all the credit just for myself. And I'm glad it came across well. I'm glad it worked, but it was also a hugely complex undertaking. I'm not a trained musician. I didn't go to the university to and for me to write something like that was quite a challenge, quite a lot of work. And I'm glad I've done it now. I can die without doing it again.
Yeah.
So no. And Giger's art is always a part of my music. Some of the songs have a really direct Giger influence, and also, for example, when we played Wacken, we had a gargantuan backdrop of Giger's Satan 1 behind us, with the approval of his widow, of course, and originally with the approval of Giger. So he's always with us, and the Giger Museum will have its 25th anniversary in a couple of years, and Giger's widow actually asked if Triptykon would play there, which is logistically a bit difficult because it's in the middle of a little village, and they would probably arrest us before the end of the first song. But so Giger is always part of what we're doing, and I really. As I said earlier, I respect him highly, and I don't want to milk him. I don't have to be Giger here, Giger there, just to
Yeah.
I'm glad we have the Giger connection, but I don't want to overuse it. I don't want to abuse it.
Yeah, definitely. Now, talking about Switzerland, and I had this actual conversation with the Swiss band Bilze yesterday, and I was asking what is their opinion about Swiss metal scene, because even though it has produced quite a few interesting bands, the amount of bands, especially ones that are actually known, is not that big. What is your opinion about Swiss metal scene or mentality, if there is one?
It's the first time I hear that there's a metal scene in Switzerland. I'm totally surprised. You have to tell me more one of these days.
So you're not feeling any kind of, say, metal community spirit?
There's a handful of exceptional bands. Bilze is one of them. Dark Space and so on.
They are also unique.
Yeah.
They are all very different compared to Norway.
That doesn't make a scene just because there's a whole mountain of bands that copy each other and are pathetic. That doesn't make it a scene.
Okay.
I know that sounds very harsh, but I know what I'm talking about.
We know.
I've been part of the Swiss scene since I can think. First I was in the scene as a metal fan and then as a musician. And maybe it's harsh, but in many cases it's justified.
Yeah, I mean, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I have to say, bands like Bilze, I'm very, very proud that they're Swiss and I'm affiliated with them in a way. That's bands that I deeply respect. They're creating something new. Dark Space and a number of others, Young Gods and so on. There's a handful, but it doesn't make a scene. And the links I get from Switzerland, the demos I get from Switzerland, so sometimes it's cringeworthy.
Okay, so it's that bad.
I mean, look. We're in Oslo, for example. Look at what they have produced.
Yeah, well, Norwegian scene is indeed quite.
And yes, it's very cynical what I'm saying here, but at the time I formed Hellhammer, it was exactly the same. every rehearsal room we used to go to, and we went to like every band we could because we were fanatical. It was all like bands trying to copy Crocus or AC/DC. It was pathetic.
Yeah.
It has just moved on a couple of generations, but it's still the same.
Yeah, a lot of
It's just
copycatting.
bad copies of what exists already.
Okay.
Both are a completely different dimension.
Yeah, they are very, very different and unique.
You know, so, but that's not a scene.
Yeah, okay. Fair
It's the
enough.
exception. And
Yeah.
I'm very proud that there's such exception, but by and large, you know.
Yeah.
I know it's cynical, and I'm probably going to be, they're going to take away my Swiss passport if they see this, but I can live with that. You know, you have to deal with reality. People told me my reality too, and sometimes I had to swallow and reevaluate myself and grow. But sometimes you need to hear the truth.
Yeah.
And sorry, after 41 years, I kind of know what I'm talking about.
We could say that.
You know,
I agree on that.
I come from that fucking country.
Yeah.
And I've forged a career, and everybody in Switzerland laughed at me.
Yeah.
For fucking years.
Yeah, it's not like you came from Sweden with the ABBA and all that,
Exactly. They laughed at me in this fucking country for years.
Okay.
And now I'm one of the most successful rock musicians that country has ever fucking produced.
Exactly.
So they can fuck right off.
Well,
And that's my final
There
word.
are some words for you people. Okay, we have to soon wrap up, but not just ready to let you go, so to speak. Now, are there any places that you would have wanted to play, either with Triumph of Death or Triptykon or whatever, but you haven't yet been able to conquer for whatever reason? Are there places you want to go and have a show at before it's all over?
Actually, I'm longing for it to be all over. I'm really ready to depart this planet. I'm not kidding. You know, I've done everything I wanted to do, way beyond any expectation, maybe beyond any dream, and I feel, yet again, very very fortunate about this. I'm not a greedy capitalist. I don't need to have more. I think that's a very destructive attitude. I'm very glad with what I've been given, and it's fine. I know I've been very lucky that with Celtic Frost, with Triumph of Death, and with Triptykon, I've been able to play all kinds of places, venues, to all kinds of interesting people. All the ambitions that we had, including the Requiem, we fulfilled. Maybe what's still missing would be playing the Montreux Jazz Festival, which has this mythical status in my mind. Not least because the Purple, the Smoke on the Water connection and recording Machine Head in the vicinity and everything. Maybe that's, but I mean, that's not the reason to stay alive. Is it?
Okay.
No, we'll see.
All right.
But I'm just doing the honor lap right now.
Okay. Yeah, you've done it. You're burying your torch.
You know, I've been very driven for decades in my life. Me and Martin were filled with testosterone. We wanted to be seen. We wanted to create. We wanted to innovate, and we've done all of that.
Yeah.
I'm taking it much easier these days. I like to sit among my books at home and just read for days on end.
Okay.
I know for young friends this must sound incredibly boring, but if I'm surrounded by my vinyl and the things on my walls and my books,
What else do you really need?
yeah, I've done it all, you know, and my gratitude is to the audience who made all of this possible. But I don't need to like manically push anymore. And if I'm invited to places like here or last night, the night before, Helsinki, I'm totally happy to do it. But it's no longer like I have to do it. It's an ambition.
Yeah.
You know.
You fulfilled your duties, so to speak.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not greedy. I don't need to have more. You know, I could never become a billionaire because I'm not that kind of person.
You're not going to be Lars Ulrich.
No, I have a mountain bike, and you know how happy that thing is. I've had it for like 25 years. Still, when I look at it, I feel so proud and happy about it because it's exactly the mountain bike I always wanted. This is the level of luxury that you know. I'm not a materialist person. I'm reading a book about the new British heavy metal that just came out, and it makes me so happy. Everything is in there that was important in my life. This is all I need.
Now, one friend wanted me to ask this particular question because he heard about this, that we had agreed this interview, and he was like, "Can you please ask Mr. Tom G. Warrior, I'm going to use that name rather than the official one, is that what else you do for living that touring with music? I mean, or do you just live on the music and touring and merchandise and stuff?"
Yeah. This is basically my life, my profession, and maybe half of my time I'm dedicating to being the co-director of the Giga Museum. That's the content of my life.
Do you ever feel there is too much things taking your time? Because obviously music and touring takes a lot of time, and then you have this curator position. Do you ever think that you should cut off some hours?
Well, it's very often that you think that they should have more hours.
Yeah.
Because things are piling up. But I'm by far not the only one to have that experience. It is as it is. You know.
If there would be something that, like beyond the music, you mentioned that you had liked your mountain bike and vinyl and something, but is there some kind of things that you should finish before, like this legacy is done, like beyond the music, like, okay, I would want to go to the moon or dive into the ocean with dolphins, or I don't know.
No, I've done everything I wanted to do. I'm working on my third book, and if I'm granted to live that long, that's going to come out, which is going to be the whole story of Celtic Frost, a much expanded version of my first book, I Morbid, with many more details, many more photos in it, and of course the next Triptykon album. But these are all optional things.
Yeah, they happen if they do.
Yeah, but they're in the process of gestation, but it's by this time it's a slow river. It's no longer a wild creek in the mountains. You know?
All right.
It's just a slow river.
Now, if you could give one kind of words of advice, or one sentence to your former self, let's go like 40 years back, and you would see this younger version of you like, hey, old man, right there, you with all the experience. Give me something that I need to know before I embark on this journey that I don't know where it's going to lead.
Don't do Cold Lake.
So that's it.
That's the most important advice I could give a young Tom Warrior. Don't fucking do Cold Lake, you asshole.
What about younger people who are like now doing their first demo and, okay, we have our new band and we're going to do an album and we look up to this great dude from Switzerland and we want to have his advice, but this don't do Cold Lake is not enough. What can you tell us for the young bands? Teenage and
but
all.
I often see, and this also applies to the younger me, what I often see is that in spite of all the enthusiasm, they vastly underestimate the patience and determination that are required to have an actual career in this industry. The determination you require is limitless, and even if you think you know it, and if you're prepared to give it, you will be overwhelmed by how much it needs, and how much patience and just stamina to stay in this. If you really want to be part of the professional scene. I didn't know that, and many of the young musicians who talk to me and ask me for advice don't know that. And as much as I try to explain it, it's very difficult to convey in a realistic manner how much of this is needed. But you have to. If you want to spend your life like me in this industry, you really need to know that.
You need to be kind of stubborn and.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about metal here. All these musicians act like these macho guys in the photos and leather and this and that. But you really need to be that guy. You need to be the warrior. It's not just an image. It's not just a hobby. It's not just fun. It's not just putting on clothes. The industry is so competitive, so difficult, and there's so many deceivers in this industry, and modern media, internet, and everything have made it just that much more complicated. And it's difficult to find a serious manager, a serious record company. It's difficult even to find a record company that still has an importance in this time, but without a record company, you're also in a way lost and so on. There's just so many stumbling blocks. You really need to be determined, and you really need to know that you want to do this. You need to be
kind of dedicated to it.
And this is the single most important advice that can be given.
All right. Thank you for your time. Now we unfortunately have to bounce, but this has been a great chat. It has been an honor to
talk for days.
We could. Maybe someday we'll have beers and whatever drinks. But this is Mr. Tom G. Warrior with a lot of great music behind his ears and all that stuff. Now you're a little bit this much more educated about his stuff. Read his books, get to know his music, and visit the Giger Museum. That's still on my to-do list as well. This is Rauta. I hope you have a good time. Greetings from Oslo, and see you soon with more videos coming your way.
Only death is real.
I am morbid. Am I? Bye. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
It was a pleasure indeed.